Welcome to Storytime with Papa Henry, and we are reading Captain Daly's Crew at Thunderhead Lake. Today we're beginning chapter 11 called The Angry Fat Man. Breathlessly we watched the strange objects. The one in the air had a long neck and tail, and the one floating on the water looked like a huge lump. It headed for the center of the lake and swung toward the east. "If that isn't the most mysterious thing I ever saw," Pudge said. I released the struggling Rufus. All he did was stutter in fear. "It's ghosts for sure! It's ghosts!" "Let's build the fire again," I suggested when the weird sight disappeared. We scraped off the sand and rescued all the wood we could from the first fire. Then Rufus and I gathered some more while Pudge rested on the beach. "That ought to bring somebody on the double," Pudge said, when the blaze leaped high in the night sky. It did. Within an hour, the houseboat chugged up, and Dan and Chuck came for us in the rowboat. "What happened?" Chuck called. "Had a bad accident. Besides getting lost and seeing the flying sea monsters again," I called. We lifted Pudge to the boat, and shortly afterward were in the cabin of Noah's Ark. When the captain saw Pudge, he exclaimed, "Pudge, it looks as though you tried to tackle 10 grizzly bears at one time." Pudge grinned painfully, and I knew he wasn't letting on how bad his ankle hurt. I spoke up. "Pudge sprained or broke his ankle." "Let's take a look," Dan said. After feeling the swollen joint, he continued, "I think I'll fly you down to a doctor and let him fix you up. That ankle might be serious, and I know you'll have to have a couple of stitches taken on that gash over your eye." When we returned to the camp, we loaded Pudge on the plane, and Dan soared away in the moonlight. The rest of us slept on the boat that night. It was raining when we awakened, a drizzly, quiet rain that spattered softly on the houseboat roof. The lake was calm, so we decided to slip into our bathing suits and loaf around on the deck and fish. The fishing was good. We caught several nice bass and a big string of bluegills and perch. Along about noon, the silver plane swooped in and taxied to Noah's Ark. It turned out that Pudge's ankle was badly sprained, but not broken. The doctor told him to keep off it for at least a week. "Just think, a whole week! Now that the mystery was getting so good, I have to go and mess myself up," he groaned. "It stopped raining, so let's go over to camp," the captain suggested. "George and I will have to go and see what reports came in on Snapper. We'll drop in this afternoon," Dan said. We helped Pudge into the rowboat and headed for shore. When we were about 20 feet away from the tents, Rufus let out a wild scream. "Them ghost monsters is in the tent!" Something was in the biggest tent, because every now and then the sides would bulge out. "Come on, fellas, it's a camp robber!" Chuck sang out, leading the way. I guess the robber heard him, because a wild sight followed. The whole tent started to move. Chuck took a flying leap on the canvas, and I followed. We both went flying through the air to land several feet away. A low, rumbling growl sounded from the heaving tent. Half stunned, we sat a moment when again the tent started to wander aimlessly. This time, I spotted a fuzzy black foot sticking out. Then another, and another. Rufus screamed, "There's a bear! I seen his foot! He's going to eat you up!" That's what it was, all right. A half-grown bear cub had wandered into camp to tackle the sugar and candy bars. That bear dashed every which way until finally he poked his snout through a rip and worked his way out. With a lumbering waddle, he disappeared in the woods. That takes care of part of the mystery. He must have been the one who upset things the other day and stole some of our food. Slim chuckled. I'm sure glad we didn't insist on wrestling with him, Gary. I'm afraid we would have lost, Chuck laughed. We fixed up a comfortable seat for Pudge and gave him a needle and thread to patch up the tent. He enjoyed himself in spite of his wounds. Chippy Chipmunk scrambled all over him, nestling between the folds of canvas and generally having a good time. As the game wardens promised, they flew in that afternoon. The look on Dan's face as he leaped to land told me they had some information. Well, boys, we have news. Snapper has 3 sons. One of them owns a restaurant in New York City, and we are waiting for the reports on his other sons. But where does the name Daniel Snapper fit in the picture? Slim questioned. Well, I'm not sure, but it's just possible there's a connection between the funny things going on and Snapper. All we can do is wait and see what the report tells us, George answered. We talked some more about the flying sea monsters and told the wardens about the bear. Dan said, as long as Pudge had his ride in the airplane, how would you others like to have one this afternoon? Wonderful, Chuck said, speaking for the rest of us. I can't take you all on one trip, Dan told us. I'll have to make 2. Besides that, I'd like a little company, Pudge added. I'll stay and keep the patient company, I said. And I ain't going up in the air. I'm staying here with Gary, Rufus informed us. They loaded up the plane and soon disappeared over Thunderhead Mountain. Rufus and I helped Pudge to a flat rock on the water's edge. The recent rain made the forest look a deep, fresh green, and the wind was soft and warm. The lake was choppy, and little waves splashed up on the shore. Here comes somebody, Rufus said, pointing to a boat headed our way. I think it's Mr. Snapper, Pudge said. It was. The man skidded the boat up on the beach and waddled out. You people still here, I see. Yes, sir, I replied, as nice as I could. The man squatted down a few feet away. Have you seen anything odd since you've been here? I winked on the sly to Rufus and Pudge, hoping they wouldn't blurt out until the right moment. What kind of things? I asked. Ghosts, or anything like that. The man leaned forward, peering inquisitively at us with his faded blue eyes. Have you seen anything like that up here? I countered. The man looked sharply at me. Just what do you mean by that, crack? I'm just wondering how much you know about the strange happenings around Thunderhead Mountain and the lake. It seems funny that you're interested. Snapper was getting angry, and he growled, I don't know anything, but I'm warning you once again. Get out of here while the going's good. We don't intend to move until a certain mystery is cleared up, Pudge told him. Then little Rufus piped up, with his dark eyes big and staring. We're going to solve the mystery of the flying sea monsters and the strange explosion and a dead fish and the strange man on Thunderhead and the wallet we found and you took and Snapper was furious. He glared hard and cold at Rufus. It gave me the scariest feeling to see how cruel the man looked. What do you know about a man on the mountain? Nothing except I seen one with a gun, Rufus answered, sliding closer to me. I noticed Snapper wasn't only angry, but he was also frightened. Chippy Chipmunk darted from Pudge's lap and scampered towards Snapper. He leaped on the man's leg and sat on his hind legs, looking at Snapper. What happened next, I wish I didn't have to tell. With a curse, Snapper raised his hand and caught the chipmunk in his palm. The little fellow peeked out from between his thumb and forefinger. Suddenly, Snapper's hand closed tight. Chippy squealed in pain, and Pudge screamed, "Don't!" Snapper didn't listen, but crushed his big fist together and snuffed the life out of the tiny animal. With another curse, He lumbered to his feet and threw the dead pet in Pudge's direction, then turned to walk toward the canoe. Rufus burst into tears and ran after the man, trying to hit him with his fists, but Snapper turned and with one swing sent Rufus sprawling. I helped the little fellow to his feet and called to Snapper as he started the motor. "Mr. Snapper, someday you'll have to answer to the Lord for your wickedness." A rattling, snarling laugh was all the answer I got. I turned to see Pudge pick up the chipmunk. Tears were running down his face. I guess it was then I began to cry a little. Poor Pudge just sat there looking at his pet. I went over, and so did Rufus, and we tried to comfort Pudge. For more than an hour, he didn't say a word. How I wished I could have helped him. He loved that chipmunk. The next chapter is called Another Clue.